The next principle of the Constitution we're going to look at real quick is the idea of checks and balances. So, checks and balances is just the idea that really each branch has the ability to stop the other one from abusing whatever powers they have. It just prevents anybody from having too much power. So we talked about that one of the things the Federalists argued was that like this government wouldn't be like England's back in the day because again each branch could stop the other one from doing something it shouldn't be doing. So there are some examples. We're just going to go through. These are not the only checks that each one has, but these are some of the major ones. So we're going to start with the executive branch first. So the executive branch has some things that it could do to check the power of the legislative branch. For example, if Congress passes a law, the president can prevent that from going into effect by doing what we call vetoing it, which is like not approving it. So Congress passes a law, then the president has to sign it. If the president doesn't sign it, it basically doesn't go into effect because he's vetoing it, right? So president has kind of that check on Congress. The other major check that the president has is on the judicial branch. So the only way that judges on the Supreme Court get their jobs is because the president basically appoints them. He gives them that job. So that's definitely some loyalty that he earns from those judges. It's a check that he has. In terms of the legislative branch, Congress has the ability to impeach the president. So this is a check that the legislative branch has on the executive branch. So from time to time, presidents are accused of committing crimes or misusing their power. That's called impeachment. Once you are impeached, you then have to stand trial. President Trump, for example, was impeached twice in his first term, but he was found not guilty in his trial both times. But one of the things that Congress can do if they feel like the president is abusing a power is at least have that trial to determine if it is a misuse of power. And then the check that Congress has on the judicial branch is that, yes, right, if you look right above, the president appoints the Supreme Court judges, but the Senate, which is obviously one part of Congress, has to approve those appointments. So the process is the president basically nominates a Supreme Court judge, and then the Senate has to basically approve that. So that's a check that Congress has on the judicial branch, right? It's also a check, to be honest, on the executive branch as well. And then one of the major checks that the judicial branch has, the courts has on the president, is that they can declare certain things the president does to be unconstitutional. And it's the same thing that they do for their check on Congress. So, like, the main thing that the courts can do is declare actions unconstitutional. If the president does something, the courts can basically prevent that from going into effect. If Congress passes a law that goes against the Constitution, the courts can prevent that from going into effect. So these are just a couple of examples of how each of the branches could stop the other one from abusing power. And again, we just call this checks and balances.